Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Huddersfield Planning Subcommittee. My name is Councillor Sheikh Ullah. I'm the chair of this committee. We'll go straight to the agenda then. Item number 1, membership of the committee. Councillor Sokol.
Chair, apology from Councillor Masharat Khan, and Councillor Beverly will introduce herself. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Addy, are you?
Hi, I'm Councillor Beverly Addy, and I'm substituting today for Councillor Manisha Kushik.
Thank you.
Chair, we've also received apologies from Councillor Andrew Marchington.
Thank you. Any more? I don't think there is. Okay.
Can I give apologies for Councillor Tony McGrath, who may turn up, but I'm not 100% sure yet.
Thank you. Item number 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. Moved by Councillor Sokol, second by Councillor Lawson. Thank you. Item number 3, declarations of interest and lobbying. Can we start with Councillor Bellamy first, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to find the right application. 2023-90876, the 3G pitch up at Combe Valley High School. Apart from being a student a long time ago for Combe Valley High School, I do actually, in the past, not recently, had conversations with Linthwaite Football Club.
Thank you.
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Thank you.
Nothing from me, Chair. Nothing, Chair.
None, Chair.
None. Councillor Safdar.
Nothing to declare.
Nothing to declare.
As per Councillor Bellamy, agenda item number 12, the 3G pitch. This is my ward, so I've heard in local community meetings about the issues. I've heard from the football club that's used the site, and I live just down the road from the school.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. I have a declaration on application 92799. Are we okay, yeah? Application 92799 in relation to the item number 11, 17 Towngate at Upper Thong. No information has been provided. Thank you. Item number 4, admission of the public. Welcome to everybody. Item number 5, deputations and petitions.
No deputations, no petitions, Chair.
Thank you. Item number 6, public question time.
No public questions, Chair.
Thank you. Items number 7, 8, 9 and 10 are the site visits, and I can confirm that we've attended all 4 site visits today. Just before we get into the main agenda, I just want to inform committee of application relating to Combe Valley High School. Information was presented to officers yesterday evening, I believe. Officers have not had a chance to look at that or present it to committee today. So the recommendation is that we allow officers time to look at the variations or whatever it is has been proposed, and we defer the application and bring it back to a future meeting when members have a full report and information in front of them.
Are we allowed to know what this information that was given at a late stage was?
Teresa.
Through you, Chair, it was suggestions about revising the proposed hours of use of the pitch that had been previously presented as part of the application.
Was there a great? I'm just mindful that it's got to planning, and now it could end up going back through sort of the system. So, is there a great sort of difference in the times that they were actually wanting?
Do you want anything else, Teresa? Okay, there we go. Yeah.
There are differences in the hours that we've not had chance to assess ourselves or consult with our professional consultees, especially our colleagues from environmental health, or advise members of the public that we sent letters to previously to inform them that the application has changed.
Thank you.
Yes, okay, so the application at Combe Valley High, that will be the first application. It's been a bit of a change just on the agenda. We will take that first. So the recommendation is to defer to a future date. Councillor Ad.
I believe there are people from the users of this site here today who may not be able to come again at a later date. Would it be prudent to hear from them now so that the members of the committee can take that with them for the next meeting? Is that not possible? Okay. It was just because I know that it's difficult for people to come out of work to take part in these meetings.
I think that we are where we're at right now, and the committee could change as well next time. I don't know if Deborah wants to say a few words.
No, I think... Oh, mine doesn't work. Oh, it does. No, I mean, we've just been submitted some recent information. It's got to be properly assessed. It's got to be consulted upon. And the most appropriate way to move forward for efficient committee time is to defer it now and bring it back to the next possible meeting. But we need to vote on that proposal.
Yeah. Could I ask then that it is that we can get it to the first possible meeting, because I am aware that the clubs that use this site are already missing games and they provide a really valuable service to the young people in the area. So they you know, if we can get it to the next meeting, then they don't miss too much. That'd be brilliant.
Thank you. So we just need a mover and a seconder for deferral of the application. That's item agenda 12. Bernard, are you moving? Yeah. Paula, defer. Seconding. Okay.
Councillor Bellamy?
For deferral.
Councillor McGuinn?
For.
Councillor Davies?
For.
Councillor Lee Richards?
For deferral.
Councillor Socko?
For.
Councillor Homewood?
For.
Councillor Safdar?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Addy?
For.
Councillor Uller?
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, then the next application is on page 9. John? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name's John Holmes, and I'm presenting this application for extensions and conversions of the existing building to living accommodation and associated works at 17 Towngate, Upper Thong. This application is brought to the Planning Committee due to the significant number of representations which have been received. This slide shows the existing and proposed front elevations. The proposed elevation details the changes to the front porch, which is here. It also shows the single-storey extension to side, which can be seen here, and new openings to the front, as well as 4 roof lights. These roof lights all being here. There's also a new opening created at the front, which is currently a roller shutter door. This slide shows the existing and proposed rear elevations, detailing a first floor addition, which is shown here. Single-storey rear extensions, which are both here and also here. And the single-storey side extension, as well as the addition of a new window and 6 roof lights. This shows the existing and proposed side elevations, with the single 2-storey side extension with its entrance doorway and 2 roof lights, and the insertion of 1 opening in the other side elevation, which would be an obscure glazed and fixed shut window. This shows the existing floor plan, and this shows the proposed floor plan. It shows where the new access would be created at the front. This would come through into the rear. There'd be a new opening created in the rear of the existing building, and there will be a parking area created as well as a turning area here. Highlighted in pink are the external alterations, which include building of new walls here, and then the 2 single-storey rear extensions and the side extension here. So this is the site when viewed from Towngate, and this shows the existing porch and side elevation of the house property. These photographs of the rear of the site, including a photograph of the view from the rear of the public house that's adjacent to the site. Finally, this is the aerial view of the overall site, and shows this is where the access will be taken from here. And it also shows an existing conservatory that would be removed from the existing building. The site's within the conservation area and the strategic green infrastructure network. The site is also within the Home Valley neighbourhood plan area. 118 objections and 35 letters of support have been received in relation to this application. A summary of the issues raised is detailed and addressed in the committee report. The Council's Highways team and Conservation team have been consulted and they've raised no objections subject to conditions. As set out in the committee report, the proposed development is considered to be acceptable in principle and is concluded to have an acceptable visual impact that will lead to some small-scale improvements in relation to previous interventions which have taken place. Conditions are recommended to ensure the visual impact of the development would be acceptable, these being for the submission of scheme of materials construction, including details of hard surfacing and windows. With regard to the impact upon neighbouring occupiers, subject to condition the window is to the western elevation would be fixed shut and obscure glazed. The proposal is considered acceptable in this regard. Subject to a further condition that the turning area is provided and that hard surfacing is permeable, it's concluded that the impact of the proposal upon access and highway safety would be acceptable. The proposal is not considered to conflict with the requirements of LP 31 in relation to the fact the site's within a strategic green infrastructure network and is considered to be acceptable with regard to ecology and climate change. As set out in the committee report, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. So we have the first speaker, Mr. Tom Fleming. You're just over here, Mr. Fleming.
Press the button to turn the microphone on, yeah.
Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Fleming. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So, having worked alongside a respected local architect and a number of other professional advisors, it is my pleasure to put before you a well-considered scheme which strikes the right balance between respecting the existing building and its setting, whilst guaranteeing its viability as a residential property fit for the 21st century and beyond. The resubmitted and amended scheme addresses the significant majority of principal objections from the public relating to the loss of view from the adjacent public house car park, having omitted the detached garage and increased boundary wall height from the original proposal. It is pertinent to note the revised scheme enjoys 35 comments in support of the application from local residents. Having incorporated all feedback contained within both statutory consultee responses, the revised plans are put before you with no objections from Kirklees Conservation and Design, no objections from Kirklees Highway Development Management, support from the Home Valley Parish Council, and a recommendation of approval subject to conditions from the case officer. This is greatly appreciated as we've worked very hard to ensure the scheme has a positive impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area, and also a positive impact on highway safety through the improvements made to the existing barn entrance. I would like to commend your officer's report and his recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions. I believe his report to be a well-balanced, considered and objective assessment of the scheme, and I welcome the recommendation in full. My wife and I have had our permanent addresses in Upthong our whole lives. We were both born in the village, educated at the local school, married in the local church, and take a great deal of pride in our locality, in particular its vernacular architecture. Upon the committee's acceptance of the case officer's recommendation to approve the application, we both look forward to working with highly skilled local tradespeople who share our pride to deliver a beautiful family home fit for future generations.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. I don't think there's any further speakers, so it's over to the committee for their comments, please. Councillor Sokol.
Are there no objector here? No, none of them. We got 150 on the report, but none of them here. Yeah. Chair, yeah, I've been on the site visit. Yeah. I have no objection to have a extension as it have been reported in the report. But I have a great concern regarding dry stone wall, which the applicant have put a timber fence around there, which completely is blocking the view of the customer who come on and the public house. I don't know why he done it. I mean, it looks like very recently he erected the wooden fence. Yeah. Are there any laws or whatever officer can contact the applicant to take down the timber fence, so not to block the public house, which I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
know the dry stone wall is dry stone wall.
Yeah.
It should not be overtaken by other things. Yeah.
I will bring John in a minute, and he can answer. He will give an update on that. Any further comments or any contributions? Councillor McGuinn.
Yeah, I went on a site visit today. I concur with Councillor Sokol's observations about the wooden fence, but we have advised that it is permitted development 2 metres from the height of the level of the land occupied by the residents. So unfortunately, although it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing, I don't think there's anything we can do about it because it's lawful. I think that's the advice we got from the officer. As regards the actual application itself, it will take parking off the road, and it will allow the resident to be able to park in the back and get out safe, probably make the road safer. I don't think it's a particularly good look, but I have to say I would have to support this, so I would move for acceptance just on the basis that it will make the highway safer. Although I do have my misgivings, like Councillor Stockwell, about the wooden fence. I don't think there's anything we can do about it because it's permitted development.
Thank you, Councillor McGuinn. So it's been moved by Councillor McGuinn. Councillor Addy next.
Yes, as on the site visit today, and it does appear that some of the existing development will be replaced with better materials. The access through the building is already a vehicular accessible route, except for the back. It means they can go in and out and come face onto the highway. It's a road that's obviously got high pressure for parking, so if it takes another couple of vehicles off the road, I think that's a good thing. It is a shame that there's some amenity lost to the village to look out over the views, but as been said, it's a permitted level of fencing. So all in all, I think the application is accessible subject to the conditions proposed.
Thank you. Any other comments? So we have a mover to move the application. Councillor McGuinn.
I'll second it.
Second, Councillor Addy. John, just very quick clarification, please.
Yeah, I think it's already been touched upon, but yeah, the fence at site, it's not forming part of this planning application. The applicant's content that it's permitted development. The council's enforcement team are aware and they can investigate that, but essentially, as long as the fence is 2 metres or less in height, then it's permitted development and doesn't need an application to the local planning authority for planning permission.
Thank you, John. So we have a mover and a seconder for to approve the application. I don't think there is any further comments. Sheila, I think we'll go to the vote.
So you're voting on approval subject to the conditions set out in the report. Councillor Bellamy?
For.
Councillor McGuinn?
For.
Councillor Davies?
For.
Councillor Lee Richards?
For.
Councillor Sokol? Councillor Homewood?
For.
Councillor Safdar?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Addy?
For.
Councillor Ulla?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, next application, page number 41, Thurston Mills, Thurston Road, Fazana.
Thank you, Chair. I am Fazana Tabassan, the Planning Case Officer for this application, and I also dealt with the relevant historical applications on this site, as referenced in the committee report. This application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Charles Greaves for the reasons set out in the report. This application is a resubmission of a similar application refused in 2021 on grounds of insufficient information being received at the time. The current proposals are now seeking to vary the previously approved landscaping scheme for the embankment along the western boundary to leave it as it is on this site as a self-seeded, naturally vegetated embankment. Just to give members an overview of the history of the site, this is the site of the former Thurston Mills site, and when the mill was demolished around 2003, if not earlier, the site lay dormant for many years, despite planning permission being granted for residential development in around 2000, followed by a couple of other schemes. For various reasons, none of the permissions were implemented, and subsequently a scheme for 17 dwellings was granted in February 2018, which at the time, following a review of the accompanied viability appraisal, resulted in no planning obligations to be sought other than the maintenance and management of a diverter culvert which runs through the site. This is a permission that was implemented, and as part of the scheme, technical details for a reinforced embankment along the western boundary was approved under condition 11 of this permission by the structures team in June 2018. A site visit was carried out by members this morning who observed the site and the embankment. So this slide shows the approved site block and landscaping plan. The light green area indicates usable garden areas, and beyond that, the dark green area, which forms part of the reinforced embankment, is land belonging to each owner of the houses that back onto the embankment. The approved landscaping scheme included a mix of native trees, shrubs, which should have been carried out following the commencement of the construction of the approved dwellings, and from its completion should have been maintained for a period of 5 years. The reason for this condition was to improve biodiversity habitat, wildlife, and conserve and enhance the conservation area. This landscaping scheme was not implemented, and the application before members is as a result of this breach of condition seeking to vary the approved landscaping scheme. Original plans submitted with this application indicated clearance of the embankment to seed it with grass and then leave it to naturally vegetate. This slide shows the current proposals, which are to retain the self-seeded naturally vegetated embankment as it is. Paragraphs 3.2 and 3.3 of the committee report sets out the applicant's reasons for seeking the variations, basically stating that due to the gradient of the embankment and the approved landscaping scheme has the potential to destabilise it. These are some photos of the site. The top top two photos are taken from the public right-of-way, which is beyond the embankment, which is just behind the fence, as you can see on the second photo. Again, just photos of the site, showing, you can see this, the embankment through the houses in some of them. These are a couple of photos of the embankment as it was in 2009 in the top photo and in 2019 in the bottom photo. The purpose of showing these is to highlight that at the time of approving the landscaping scheme, the finished gradient or engineered solution for the embankment was not known, and the landscaping approved was to ensure the site integrates well with its surroundings and to achieve biodiversity interests within the site. The proposal now seeks to retain the naturally vegetated embankment. Officers support this for the following reasons. The embankment forms private garden areas to properties that back onto it. The applicant would require consent of each landowner to carry out any works to the embankment area. According to the applicant, not all residents agree. The clearance of the existing established vegetation could potentially impact and compromise the structural integrity of the reinforced embankment and as a result void its 120-year guarantee. Realistically and practicality of adequately being able to manage and maintain any landscaping on the embankment, whether by existing residents or developer, due to the gradient of the embankment. Notwithstanding all that said, the existing self-seeded naturally vegetated embankment in its current form provides a wildlife habitat, contributes to the wildlife habitat network beyond the western boundary and conserves the character of the conservation area, which was the reasoning for Condition 5. There will be very little merit in clearing it to seed it with grass, which over time will essentially result in a similar feature to that as existing. With respect to biodiversity net gain, a calculation was carried out by the Council's biodiversity officer to compare the biodiversity value of the previously approved scheme in comparison to the existing self-seeded embankment. In this case, there was a shortfall of approximately 50% of biodiversity units, which is to be sought in monetary value equating to approximately 20,000 from the applicant through a legal agreement. This is then to be used off-site on council-owned land to create or improve biodiversity habitat or additional tree planting in accordance with Kirklees Local Plan Policy LP30 and Policy 13 of the Home Valley Neighbourhood Plan. Initially, landscape officers advised there would be potential to provide additional tree planting at the Meltham Road Recreation Ground, which is approximately around 500 metres to the south-west of the application site shown in red here, or the People's Park in the centre of Honley within the same ward as the application. However, it has recently been confirmed that there are no tree planting sites within Home Valley North. There is, however, scope in Home Valley South and Crosshill Moor Ward, which are in the pipeline for the coming years, as reported in the committee update. To conclude, having taken a balanced approach of all the material considerations, the recommendation before members is to delegate approval of the application and the issuing of the decision notice to the Head of Planning and Development to allow the applicant to submit a deed of variation to the original Section 106, which should include an additional obligation for the off-site contributions to secure the recognised shortfall of the biodiversity net gain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fazana. We have one speaker, Councillor Charles Greaves. Good afternoon, Charles. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Thanks. So, members will note from their papers the number of reasons I gave as to why I felt this case needed to come back before committee rather than just be addressed between officers and the applicant. Let's start by saying that this was a derelict site that needed to be developed, but that doesn't allow anything and everything. The developer made a commitment on this site, they failed to honour that. Officers have come up with what you might consider a pragmatic answer to it. The only issue with that, really, is that it allows the developer to get away from meeting their obligations whilst putting an awful lot of responsibility on the residents. Those residents are totally unaware of the circumstances around this. They don't understand what they're taking on because the developer's never really explained it to them. The developer's made incorrect statements in respect of its dealings, not just with myself, but with them. The residents I've spoken to have said they've had no contact from the developers in respect of how they understand the banking to be. But there's some key issues here. So whilst the pragmatic solution's being developed, there's some principles that I think people need to have in mind. So this was a clear breach of condition, and it could only have been complied with prior to completion of the site because of access. This was an issue that was in sight for some time, and that the developer willfully chose to ignore that condition. Officers had engaged with the developer for an extended period of time, and this is the outcome to it. I feel that the decision to normalise a breach completely undermines the role and purpose of a committee when it sets its conditions. It sets a precedent that may encourage others to choose to fail in meeting their obligations, and it really does risk undermining the confidence and trust residents and councillors have in this process. A couple of questions. Has a suitably qualified person inspected the banking and confirmed that it is actually stable and that it will remain so under the proposals outlined in this application? The answer is no, I believe. Are the residents aware that the developer has shifted the liability of maintaining the banking onto them and that Kirklees will no part in maintaining the banking? The answer to that is no, I believe. Do residents fully understand what they should and should not do in respect of the banking to comply with planning, insurance, warranties and safety? The answer to that, again, I believe to be no. In simple practical terms, how will any one resident ensure that their neighbours are meeting their obligation to maintain the banking correctly when a failure in one part could be catastrophic on neighbours? Why hasn't the viability of the scheme been redetermined using the actual figures now that there is the legal power to do so? The developer, by not meeting this condition, has saved themselves a substantial amount of money. Great that we've now asked them for some money towards the biodiversity net gain, but they originally submitted a viability appraisal claiming that this site would not make them any money at all. The houses are slightly bigger than that viability assessment and to a higher standard than that viability assessment. The total sales proceeds are grossly in excess of what was in that viability assessment, and in respect of the abnormal costs on this site, as they failed to comply with the conditions, they've actually not covered some of those costs that they said that they would have to. To me, that leaves a massive gap. And I feel that whilst this is a pragmatic option from officers in how to resolve this issue, it leaves so many questions unanswered. And I would ask this committee to refuse this application and to hold this developer to account. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Thank you very much. Deborah, shall we bring you in now, or should we take?
I wasn't quite sure whether those questions were all rhetorical questions or they were questions that you specifically wanted an answer to, and I haven't got them all down. So.
Well, I cite them as rhetorical, but I think mainly because in my previous conversations with
Well, we'll cover what we can, and then.
I think the key one is, as somebody qualified.
Back to the microphone if you speak.
Yeah, I think the absolute key one is, has somebody suitably qualified confirmed that the banking in its current condition and as it will be in the future is actually stable?
That's number one question. I actually got that one down, so but I'm not the one to answer that.
The other one is, are residents aware of what their obligations will be under this amended proposal? How will one resident enforce against another for failure to maintain their section?
Right, I'll just stop you on those two then, because they're outside our remit here. They're dealt with in private law, and those issues will have been discovered and discussed by the solicitors for the purchasers.
Well, with respect, the applicant claims that that's occurred and residents say it hasn't.
Okay.
Well, that's for, how many dwellings are there? 17 sets of solicitors to have picked that up and spoken to their prospective purchasers, so that's not for us today.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Addy and then Councillor Suri-Richards, and then we'll come back to you, Fazan. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yes, I think I may be echoing some of what Councillor Greaves has said, to be honest, but I wanted to ask, is it appropriate that the supporting banking fall into the ownership and responsibility of individuals? Is there anything to stop one of the individuals spraying and denuding their part of the banking, possibly destabilising, as mentioned, and then undermining this 120-year guarantee? And as we've heard on the site visit, there have been objections from the homeowners to the state of the banking, which would suggest that that might be something they would then try to do.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor Lee Richards and then Councillor Bellamy, please.
I would support Councillor Addy's comments, but also, are the residents under our extra obligation for insurance? We've had a resident where banking collapsed and that left him in financial difficulty. So would the residents therefore have to take out extra insurance in case of the banking collapse? Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah?
Again, that's not for us here today. We're a local planning authority. That's for the individual house owners and their insurers and their solicitors to deal with, not the council.
Thank you, Deborah. Councillor Bellamy?
Thank you, Chair. I really do agree with what Councillor Greaves has just said, and I think that this does undermine the role and purpose of this planning committee, to be honest. If we're not holding developers to account with stuff, then there is serious problems somewhere. But the applicant said that not everyone agrees with what he's gone through. Have we actually checked with the residents themselves? Do they, and has he spoken to them or not? Because I think we really do need to know whether he has or not.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. Fazana?
Thank you, Chair. With regards to a question raised by Councillor Greaves, with regards to whether someone of a professional technical background has checked the structural integrity of the embankment, this application is for the variation of a soft landing scheme. It's not to question the structural integrity, and there's no reason for us to question that. It's the variation of purely and simply a soft landing scheme, not the structural integrity of the reinforced embankment, which was approved under Condition 11 by the Structures Council structure team. With regards to Councillor Addy's question, is there any responsibility or liability for each resident so as not to compromise the structural integrity of the embankment? On the original permission, there was a condition imposed, I think it's condition number 19, withdrawing all permitted development rights to ensure that future residents don't dig or step or do anything within the embankment. I think that's included in the conclusion. It sets out that, yes, it was condition 19, withdrawing all permitted development rights. So when the residents bought the house, they should have been made aware by their solicitors, really. They should have had all these documents. They're all on public, on the website, the conditions. That's it.
Councillor Addy. Next, please.
Yes, yeah, we're talking about the vegetation, the soft development, but isn't that supposedly supposed to enhance the integrity of the banking and solidify it? And if there's nothing to stop somebody who owns that land, they might not be able to develop on it, but there's nothing to stop them completely spraying it and leaving it bare or putting other vegetation on, is there? Or is there? Maybe there is.
There's nothing to stop them removing their existing landscaping. Thank you, Chair.
Any comments? I mean, there is no movers or seconders. Donna, you next. Councillor Bellamy.
It's on the shortfall of the 50% and the 20,000. And, you know, you're saying that by rights it should be spent in Owen Valley North. But by the sounds of it, it won't be because there's supposedly no tree planting or anything in Owen Valley North. Have we absolutely looked everywhere in Owen Valley North to see if it could be kept within the ward if that goes through? Because it should be kept in that ward for the biodiversity.
Proposals for additional tree planting or any biodiversity habitat creation, but the preference, I've set my preference as case officer back to landscape officers for the money to be spent within the same ward. But my legal colleague might confirm the money can be spent on council-owned land in accordance with the policy.
Yeah, we've got a policy which allows us to do that. Your question was, has no stone been unturned in Home Valley North where it can be used? It's quite difficult finding planting places unless it's council owned. I mean, it's very difficult to have planting places, which is why there are these council owned parks have been suggested as public places which are available to everybody within that vicinity and is available. It's there, available and can be accommodated.
And Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'm just a little bit unclear on some of this. So in terms of the conditions that's in place now, is what we're saying that it isn't actually possible to deliver that condition short of, you know, knocking down everything and starting again? Is that the issue? Or is it possible to actually deliver the condition as it is currently? That I'm a bit confused as to why we would vary the condition, or are we saying that it's what they're proposing we think is a better solution? I'm a little bit unclear.
I understand the reason for the condition originally was to soft landscape that banking with mixed planting. 5 years down the line, it's all self-seeded and it's just banking there now. So why go backwards and do that work? Is that right? That's part of the condition, isn't it? Picking up on what Councillor Greaves was saying and just echoing somebody else, it sounds to me like a developer had an expensive solution or an expensive condition put on them when the work was originally being done. They failed to do that work and they're almost now trying to buy their way out of that with S106 money. Is that? Yeah, thank you.
I think it's difficult to speculate on what the developer was thinking or not thinking. The position that we find ourselves in today is that the banking has been divided into different curtilages. So the land is owned by the residents. So in a practical way, we would have to get every resident to agree to someone coming in and doing the planting there. In terms of, from a policy point of view, we've got an alternative which provides biodiversity net gain, which can be provided in the vicinity of these places. So effectively, it is very difficult and in fact physically, legally very difficult. You'd have to get all 17 to agree, and physically it'd be very difficult to actually do the planting. I understand as a non-planner.
Okay, Councillor Bellamy next.
Thank you, Chair. What about Brockholes Rec? They're looking at planting trees there anyway and doing some stuff there, which is known by the north.
Councillor Addy, and then we'll go to Fazana, and then Councillor Holwood.
I mean, you know, it's great to offset the biodiversity and have the biodiversity that's naturally grown there. I am quite concerned that the residents know the responsibility that they've taken on, that they realise that just because the developer hasn't come and put something on there, that is there needs to stay there for the structural integrity, and the developer perhaps needs to be. Can the developer be made to point that out to the residents that they need? That, you know, if they start denuding that and putting shells in it and putting planting things in, that they are now responsible for the structural integrity of their section of this banking. That's, I mean, you know, keeping the biodiversity is great because it's all naturally occurred, but needless to say, it doesn't appear to have been a high priority to make them aware of this.
Thanks, Councillor Addy. Fazana, and then Councillor Holwood.
There's a couple of questions by Councillor Bellamy. Firstly, with regards to whether all residents have we verified if they've been asked by the developer. All 17 residents were informed by neighbour letters when the application came in. Again, when additional information, the additional statement came through, they were again notified in writing. I think only 2, as you can see in the update, only 2 have responded following the publication of that additional statement. With regards to whether Brockholes recreation grounds being considered, I can go back to landscape officers and put that question to them. And the third question was that the existing landscaping is if residents start removing that, it could potentially destabilise the structural integrity of the embankment. That's true, it can do. And I'm sure the residents and the house owners are awfully aware of their responsibilities and their liabilities when they bought the houses. It would have been in their documents, legal documents, with regards to the responsibility of each part of this embankment backing onto their house. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fazana. Deborah?
I was just going to say that this business about the structural integrity of the banking, that has been created and obviously has been passed because there's, is it 150 years guarantee on it? 120 years guarantee. So I don't think there's an issue with that. And specifically today, we're not talking about the structural integrity of the banking. We're talking about the landscaping, the soft landscaping on top of it, the planting, and the reason that the condition was put on in the first place was to ensure that there's a well laid out scheme of healthy trees and shrubs in the interest of the community to conserve and enhance the significance of the Honley Conservation Area. Nothing to do with integrity of the banking, but that's what we're here today to talk about, the variations of conditions, because the scheme wasn't in place and now it's self-seeded. So we've got to do something about it.
Yeah, it was quite specifically said on the site visit that the vegetation would be part of the structural integrity probably, so that's why I was concerned that if people start denuding their bit, then consequently it might affect, and of course then if they start unearthing stuff and that, then clearly that might be, if they're well aware and that's fine, but you know, we have seen that there are objections to the state of it, so it is clear that people might well want to do something different with it. So if the landscaping that was promised them isn't going to happen, they're likely to try and do their own thing. I'm just very concerned that they're aware, and hopefully maybe by watching this they will be, but you know, aware of what will happen if they did do that.
Yeah. Okay. There hasn't been anyone that's formally... James, Councillor Homewood.
Just quickly, I just want to say that in terms of the difference between the landscaping, I'm not too upset about it. It's just on the wider point around the conditions and changing the conditions, I am a little bit, I don't know whether this should be looked at as part of this application or a wider review of it, but it does seem a bit concerning to me that you can agree to conditions, you then build there without fulfilling the condition to the point in which you can't go back and change it, and then your argument is, well, it's too difficult to get 17 different owners to agree. And it sounds like you were saying we've got no legal recourse to hold anybody to account for that, or I know there's the £20,000 involved. I just don't know, you know, I get that if it sounds to me like if we don't do anything on this condition, what's probably going to happen is nothing's going to happen, and I don't know what we would then do. But it just seems a bit, you know, what was the point in putting the condition on in the first place? I think is the point, and it's not clear to me. It almost sounds like we're saying there was nothing we could have ever done to ensure the condition was met.
Well, legally, we could enforce against every one of the 17 residents who now own the land upon which this landscaping should appear. But that would be highly unpalatable and not something that we as a council want to do, and therefore we look to find an alternative solution to deal with what we're facing today.
Okay, that's clear. So just for my clarity then, when you were talking about when people purchase the properties, effectively whether it was or not, that requirement would have been part of the agreement they took on when they purchased that piece of land. So it's no longer the developer's responsibility to deliver that condition.
When you're buying a property, you employ a solicitor who makes the necessary searches, and one of those fundamental searches, in my opinion, is to see that all planning conditions have been complied with before you buy the property, and either they weren't told that by the solicitor acting, in which case they've got an action against their solicitor, or they were told that and they thought, well, we don't care, we'll just buy it anyway. So that's where we are now.
Okay, that's clearer, thank you.
Or Councillor Homewood.
I'll move the officer's
So
recommendation.
it's moved by Councillor Homewood. Okay, Sheila, I think we'll go to the vote. Sorry.
Can we just clarify that that includes the conditions set out in section 12 as well, because that's not overtly mentioned in the actual recommendation, although that was the intention. Thank you, Chair.
So the vote is on delegating approval to the Head of Planning and Development to complete the list of conditions as just mentioned by Teresa, and for the completion of a deed of variation to the original section 106 obligation. Councillor Bellamy?
I'm going to vote against just because I think this does undermine the role of this committee, to be honest. We're letting things not, you know, things aren't being done and not being followed up. However, if it is approved, can I just make sure that you do look at Brockles Rec?
Councillor McGuinn?
Against.
Councillor Davies?
Against.
Councillor Lee Richards?
Against.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Homewood? Councillor Safdar?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
Against.
Councillor Addy?
Against.
Councillor Uller?
For.
That falls, Chair, so you need to move to another proposal. Somebody has got to propose an alternative decision to be voted upon. You know, we need a reason.
To look at the Brockles Rec for the biodiversity, and also for more information to come back on why these conditions weren't enforced in the first place. I know that's a bit broad, but yeah.
Councillor Bellamy, I think, has that been seconded by you, Bev, the deferral? Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded for for deferral by Councillor Bellamy and Addy. Go to the vote.
Councillor Bellamy?
For deferral.
Councillor McGuinn?
For.
Councillor Davies?
For.
Councillor Lee Richards?
For deferral.
Councillor Sokol?
Abstain.
Councillor Homewood?
Against.
Councillor Safdar?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Addy?
For.
Councillor Uller? That's carried, Chair.
Thank you, everybody. I think we'll have a small, short break. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. The last and final application, page number 61. Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tom Hunt, Case Officer for this householder application. The proposal is for the erection of a single-storey side extension, an enhanced porch with associated external alterations. This application has been brought to the subcommittee for determination at the request of Councillors Smith and Burke, as set out on paragraph 1.1 of the report. The application site is outlined in red on the left, with an aerial overview indicating the existing development of the site at the junction of Maplin Avenue and Maplin Drive. Bear with me one moment. I don't know why it's suddenly... Yeah. Right. Back to normal. The application site is outlined, Yes, the existing building has been previously extended with extensions to its side at first floor and rear. An additional single-storey side extension is proposed with altered porch. This would be flush with the porch primary elevation and forward of the host's main body, close to the side boundary. It would be seen from the front, rear, and side views of the site. As set out in the committee report, this would appear close to the side boundary with limited screening on raised ground within a prominent corner plot. This will create a dominant additional form of development through the house and the street scene. The recommendation is that the application be refused. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. So the first speaker is Mr. Khalil. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the meeting. You have 3 minutes.
So thank you for the opportunity. The main reason we want to do this extension is our two autistic children to meet their needs. So we, because it's a public meeting and we have been advised that it's broadcasting, so we will be unable to share the confidential information in more details. I'll try to briefly explain these changes. So they've got very complex needs, both of them. And we have given the supporting documents from all the professionals who are involved with them. So the main thing, the main reason we want is a separate space properly adopted for them too, especially my daughter. She's older and she's got quite challenging behavior. Accessible team has visited our house last year and they agreed that she needs this space, especially the adopted bathroom with changing facilities like changing bed, shower facilities downstairs, and she needs a downstairs bedroom. But they are not considering the needs of other child who is in similar needs and the younger two children and overall family situation. So Louise Charsworth, who was our a social worker, she has actually said to us that for health and safety reasons and to meet other children's needs, that plan is not suitable for our family. And that's why it's better to have the extension on the side. The reason we want a bigger, the maximum size as much as we can to the front and to the sides, mainly because the bathroom sides will be considerably big, and the room, because they have got sensory needs, and they don't have access to anywhere outside, like parks or any other children play areas because of their challenging behavior. So we have got a swing and a trampoline in the back garden, but you can see due to the weather conditions, most of the year we are unable to use them. It's just during the summer time, a few weeks, we use them. So we are hoping to have this extension, a bigger room where
30 seconds.
Where we can have some sensory space for them, use for the living area during the day, maybe at night time as a bedroom, and maybe have a swing or like some sort of play facilities for them during the day, because they don't have access to anything outdoors at the moment, and we cannot see that anytime soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khalil. Thank you for your contributions. The next speaker is Mrs. Idris. Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting, Mrs. Idris. You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Right, hi everyone. As my husband discussed, that the main reason is because of our children that we want the side extension. The side extension will not really affect any neighbours because it won't be overlooking into anyone's garden. The space that we need is because our children who are both autistic need that space, and we have 2 other children and their needs are not being met because the environment at home, our family life, is very disrupted because of our older daughter. Our daughter in the 6-week holidays actually has gone into crisis, so things have been very difficult at home. All the professionals that are involved have said that we need this, that she would benefit from this space. So, I mean, like my husband said, a lot of information is confidential, we can't discuss it, but the main reason that we want this side extension is for our children, to meet their needs and to make our family life better. Our children, we have applied for a day centre where they can go on weekends, but we haven't been able to get any of that for the past 2 years. We are given direct payments, but we're not able to use them because there isn't any proper skilled carers available who are able to deal with autistic children. We found that very difficult. Any services that are available, we haven't been able to access it much. So most of the time they are at home. So that is the reason why we want this extension doing. So I hope you can take that into consideration, that it does affect all of our mental health, our children, ours. We don't really have a social life. Everything is sort of around our children. So that is the main reason why we are wanting this extension, so that we can support our children to the best of our ability. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Idris.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contributions. Finally, we have a statement which Sheila's going to read out from one of the ward councillors. It's from two.
So it's a statement from Councillor Smith and Councillor Burke. We are writing in support of the planning application. The proposal is to erect a single-storey side extension and enlarged porch which would serve as an additional living room and shower room. The family has 2 members with disabilities, and the extension would allow the family to have separate spaces they need to better meet their needs and care requirements. We have visited the residents and are in no doubt that the extension is required in order to facilitate practical care needs. A lack of space can impact on the well-being of disabled people and those who are autistic, who can easily feel overwhelmed. Space is an important consideration, as is creating a physical environment which will reduce anxiety and enable the family to separate family members when required for their own safety and well-being. It is well documented that quiet spaces for alone time provide essential well-being benefits for autistic people to allow them to recover and build resilience, feel rested and calm before accessing social spaces again. We believe that the extension will help the family meet their environmental needs and will help to create a physical environment which better meets the family's needs. We note the officer recommendation is to refuse the application on the basis that the proposed extension would result in an over-prominent form of development. However, as we hope members will agree, having had the benefit of a site visit, we do not believe that the proposal represents overdevelopment of the site or is out of keeping with the surrounding area. We believe that the corner plot will accommodate the proposed single-storey development without being cramped or overbearing to neighbouring properties. We also believe that the use of sympathetic materials and use of an existing boundary wall and tall mature hedges around the boundary would mitigate against any harm to the visual amenity of the locality. We are not aware that any objections were submitted by any of the neighbours, and we understand that the council did not receive any representations. We believe that this further demonstrates that the proposal would not have a negative visual impact on the surrounding built environment.
Thank you, Sheila. So, Councillor Bellamy, and then Councillor Addy, and then Councillor
Thank you, Chair. It's just a bit of more of a question. Would we be better off going into private session for this, and then we could perhaps get that bit more information that's confidential? I don't know whether that's going to help or not, but it's just a suggestion.
No, I don't think that's necessary. I think the speakers have made clear what their personal circumstances are. The ward councillors say have confirmed what they have seen, and you as members going to the site today were there to view what you think this extension will look like. The planning officers have said that they consider the proposed extension, by virtue of its siting and prominent corner plot in proximity to the side boundary, scale and design, would result in a dominant and unsympathetic addition to the host dwelling. I think that is what you have, as members, have got to consider. Do you think that it will be dominant and prominent and unsympathetic, primarily?
Thank you,
your
Deborah.
decision today.
Councillor Addy. Paula, did you want to speak?
No, sorry.
All right, okay, sorry. Councillor Addy.
So I was at the site visits following this, but unfortunately couldn't make this one. Could I hear from my fellow committee members on their thoughts as to what they saw when they visited the site, please? I note there's no objections from the neighbouring homes or anything, and this is a slightly smaller application to the previous one. Could my fellow committee members tell me what they thought of the site?
Yeah, Councillor Sokol, and then Councillor Safdar, and then Bernard, I've got you.
Thank you, Chair. When we had a site visit this morning, my views were more or less like as officer explained to us, overdevelopment, so and so. But now, by listening the applicant, both husband and wife, my views have been changed now. I think there is a need for a space to meet the needs of their children with disabilities or other medical reason, which council, as a council, we always willing to support that. And it's only single story. Yeah, I know that it's very high level on this property, on the other side the low level, but there are no objection from anywhere on those facing to other property. I incline to approve the application, honestly, for the benefit of the children and the benefit of the.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. So I think Councillor Sokol's saying that he is against the officer's recommendation to refuse, And if that is the committee's decision, then we would need clear reasons of what that decision is, the reasons of why that is. So we'll go to Councillor Safdar and then Councillor McGuinn next.
Okay, so obviously I do respect the fact that the family requires some privacy, but I'm just going to, just for a moment, paint a picture that I'm living there, because I've got a severely autistic child, and he can be incredibly challenging. So, and the home he's in now, there is a little bit of a separate living area, and without that, it would be impossible for his mother to care for him. So, I know obviously we've got to look after planning.
Can you just bear in mind that this is a publicly webcast meeting?
That's fine. That's fine.
And
that's fine.
don't give any personal
That's fine.
information
That's fine.
about
Fine.
your family.
No, that's fine. No, I'm not going to mention names, obviously, but so I think in exceptional circumstances like this, we've got to look at the mental and physical well-being of our residents, especially children with autism. So I would recommend allowing this building to take place. I do understand that there may be issues in the area regarding height and possible overdevelopment, but what are we doing? What are we doing here? You know, if we can't support autistic children and the parents that are struggling to look after those children.
Thank you, Councillor Safdar. Councillor McGuinn, and then we'll go to... Sorry.
I think when we went on the site visit today, the officer said that people who looked at whether this was a suitable extension for the children said that the advice was that it wasn't a suitable extension. What they were planning didn't fit in with the needs of the children. So I understand what Councillor Safdar is saying. I know his circumstances. He knows I know, and I know that the parents are going through a similar situation. So I do bear that in mind. But we really need to know whether anything can be done for the applicants within present planning law. So could I ask Mr. Hunt, the planning officer, to explain to us what can be done within present planning regulations that will extend the house for the couple, for the applicant. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor McGuinn. Teresa.
Thank you, Chair. I've noted what members have said, taking into account personal circumstances of the applications in the consideration of the application. I've also taken into account Councillor Sokol's views, who was out on the site visit today, and he did state it's a single-storey extension only. So I'm assuming from that you were taking into account perhaps an alternative view from the reason of refusal set out in the committee report in front of us today. So we have sought to negotiate with the applicants on this application, and we are mindful to try and come up with a solution that would both meet the needs of the applicant and also overcome the issues that we have with the bulk and massing of the extension. So we've set that out in a public report, in a public way, although we recognise that more's been said today. I suppose we have gone back, and because this is the scheme that has not been amended since then, we have to conclude that this is the application that the applicants wish us to determine, and that's why it's here today, to stop any further delays with the assessment and determination of the application. Ultimately, it's for in my view, members to decide whether the reason for refusal set out on visual amenity is that something that members would support, or having seen it on site or seen the plans today, do members consider that it doesn't actually impact adversely on the visual amenity of the area and thus is acceptable in its own rights? That's as is set out in the report, and with every report there is a balanced decision to be made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Teresa. Councillor Addy, next please.
Could I just ask for clarification? Does that mean there was a suggested compromise put forward and hasn't been amended on this application, but is available as a follow-up application?
As when we're dealing with planning applications, as far as we have issues with planning applications, if we are able to liaise with applicants and agents, we will do. Ultimately, you may not always come to a decision that both parties agree with.
Thank you. Councillor Homewood next.
Yeah, can I just clarify something? So obviously you've talked about the visual amenity and the reasons for refusal. So are you saying that in terms of the individual circumstances that have been raised, which are not covered in the report and there's no reference to any of that there, are you saying that that's not a relevant planning consideration for us or can we consider that in balance with the visual amenity impact?
Exceptionally, personal circumstances can be taken into account in the assessment of the application. They would rarely outweigh other material planning circumstances, but certainly in the balance of assessing the visual impact of it, which is the only reason for refusal. It's not on residential amenity, it's not on highway safety or anything else. It's purely on visual amenity, and we have gone into some general details in the history of negotiations about negotiations that have taken place so far.
Thank you, Teresa. Councillor Davies and then Councillor Addy.
Yeah, can I just, having been on the site visit and seen the place this morning myself, I think I'm in support of Councillor Sokol on that. It is only a single story. There have been no objections from any of those residents that would face onto that visual, that would be impacted by that visual amenity. And having seen it in its location within the rest of that, the surrounding roads and the locale, it might be individually impact visual amenity, but I don't think it's necessarily out of keeping with where it is in terms of the benefits that a family might need and a family might wish for their children. Thank you.
So just to clarify, sorry, Councillor Addy next.
Yes, personally, looking at it, I don't see a massive problem with the visual amenity in the area, especially since there's no objections locally. But I'm just slightly concerned that Councillor McQueen mentioned that there was some mention that this extension isn't what's needed for the family, because that's obviously key to overriding that visual amenity for me.
Chair, there's many ways of looking at an application. What we're assessing today and what members are assessing today is the scheme before them. So it's on the merits of the scheme before members that you'll be determining today.
Okay, so Councillor Suley Richards and then Councillor Lawson. Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Lawson.
All I'd actually like to say is that none of the neighbours have actually put in any complaint about this, about sort of the visual amenity to the thing there, and that to me is looking at sort of what the neighbours have thought, what the family is going through. I would be sort of minded to actually is to actually reject the officer's recommendations.
Okay, so I think, if I'm right, Councillor Sokol, no one's moved and seconded away from officer's recommendation to refuse.
Yeah.
So
I move to approve the application.
Approve the application.
Approve the application.
Second by Paula Davis. So we're going to need the reasons now.
I think we can articulate some reasons. You wrote down, Teresa.
Councillor Sokol talked about the need for space, but then he said it was single storey only, and he had been out on site this morning. No objections from the neighbours who would be impacted by the visual amenity of the proposal. And then Councillor Davis, in her comments, said she didn't think it was out of keeping with the area and the context of everything again as well. Again, not necessarily, probably the opposite of what officers were saying in their recommendation about it being dominant and unsympathetic addition. So it appears that members, in that way, taking everything into context and other things that have been heard, think that the application would not be harmful to the visual amenities of the area and would be in accordance with policies LP2, LP24 of the Kirklees local plan and key planning principles of the house extension supplementary planning document.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Bellamy.
Councillor Bellamy.
Can we put a condition on that there's no more? This is the final. Ah, right, okay.
Councillor Addy.
Could we obviously take into account the mention in 10.41 and a condition to look at that?
Yeah, we've taken that in. Thank you. Sheila.
So just to clarify, it's been moved and seconded. It would be to delegate approval to the head of planning and development so that appropriate conditions can be imposed on the development and for the reason set out by Teresa. Okay, so you're voting for approval contrary to the officer recommendation. Councillor Bellamy.
For, but can we also make sure that them conditions are adhered to?
Councillor McGuinn.
Very reluctantly for.
Sorry, for.
For,
Yep.
yeah.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Lee Richards.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
Councillor Safdar.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
For.
Councillor Addy.
For.
Councillor Ola.
Abstain.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you, everybody. That concludes our meeting and our agenda. Thank you very much for your attendance.